Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Monday to you and yours. Happy Monday. Happy start of the week to you. And we have a great week of shows planned for you today. And we're going to get off to an awesome start today on Monday. What a better day to get off to a good start than at the beginning of the week. Royce White will be here, as will Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell. They'll be here today. We got a tightly bunched, powerful show. We're going to talk about Tim Anderson, Tony La Russa, and Josh Donaldson. We're going to talk about Tiger Woods and what happened to him at the PGA Championship. We're going to talk about my favorite left-wing comedian, Bill Maher. I've been a fan of Bill Maher for close to 15, 20 years. And the guy just keeps coming further and further over to my way of thinking, and we'll talk about that with Steve Kim as well. But we're going to start with baseball, which we don't normally do, but something fascinating has happened in the baseball world. And so I'm going to start a fire about what happened in the baseball world, and then we're going to bring Royce White in to fan those flames. So let's get it started without further ado. Tony La Russa, he's a baby groomer. His pronouns are they and them. The legendary 77-year-old baseball skipper and best friend of Bob Knight and Bill Parcells has apparently bowed to the social media and social justice winds and reinvented himself as a groomer. He's overseen the transition of the Chicago White Sox into a sixth grade girls softball team. Adhering to leftist custom, Chicago's lone African-American player, Tim Anderson, volunteered to be the first major leaguer to sacrifice his stick and balls. Saturday night, Anderson erupted in anger and emotion because a member of the New York Yankees, Josh Donaldson, trolled him with the nickname Jackie, a reference to the Hall of Famer Jackie Robinson. 3 years ago, in a Sports Illustrated interview, Anderson analogized himself to the baseball pioneer who integrated Major League Baseball in 1947. Anyone remotely familiar with sports culture isn't surprised that Anderson's opponents would use the analogy to rib the shortstop. La Russa has been involved with professional baseball for 59 years. He made his Major League debut in 1963 with the Kansas City Athletics. An infielder, La Russa is acutely aware of the kind of banter players use to get inside the head of an opponent. Jackie is quite possibly the tamest and lamest insult ever uttered on a baseball diamond, football field, basketball court, soccer pitch, or ice hockey rink. La Russa compared it to one of the worst. Here's Tony La Russa describing the grave insult of being called Jackie.
You made a racist comment, Donaldson, and that's all I'm going to say.
That's pretty strong.
That's as strong as it gets.
La Russa turned a routine bench-clearing standoff into a Black Lives Matter debate. To no one's shock, Tim Anderson embraced the role of baby George Floyd with a heavy dose of Jussie Smollett. Anderson loves attention. He's a bat-flipping showboat. Here's him leaning into the controversy he started, La Russa fueled, and now Anderson is taking to the next level.
Yeah, he just made a, disrespectful comment. Basically was, trying to call me Jackie Robinson. Like, what's up, Jackie? I don't play like that, and I don't really play at all. I wasn't really, bothering nobody today, but, he made a comment and, it was disrespectful, and I don't think it was called for. It was unnecessary.
That was when you guys crossed paths with shortstop there at the end of the third?
Yeah, but that happened in the first time he got on, and I spared him that time, and then it happened again. It was just, just uncalled for. It's not, I got time to, be playing like that.
How did you manage to contain yourself based on that kind of comment?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know, to be honest. It was very disrespectful, don't want to play like that.
You call it disrespectful. Tony just said it was racist. Is that accurate?
Yeah, same along that same line, yeah.
If you're gonna say it with your chest stuck out. Don't say it with your head down. It was disrespectful, and I don't play like that. It was disrespectful. Yeah, he knows what he's saying is a crock of doo-doo. That's why he won't make eye contact with anybody, and that's why he's mumbling and he doesn't say it with his chest out. Anderson overreacted to Donaldson's harmless jab. The race car justified Anderson's on-field blow-up, put Donaldson on the defensive, and summoned Major League Baseball to launch an investigation. I'd love to know what exactly the league is going to investigate. Donaldson copped to calling Anderson Jackie. Listen for yourself.
All right, so first inning I called him Jackie. So let me give you a little context of that. 2019, he came out with an interview, said that he's the new Jackie Robinson of baseball. He's going to bring back fun for the game, right? And 2019, when I played for Atlanta, we actually joked about that on the game. I don't know what's changed from, and I've said it to him in years past, not in any manner than just joking around for the fact that he called himself Jackie Robinson, So, if something has changed from that, like my meaning of that is not any term trying to be racist by any fact of the matter. It was just off of an interview that what he called himself. And when we said that before, we joked about it. He laughed, whatever.
What is there to investigate? I mean, seriously. What's the investigation going to entail? And why is the media playing along with this? What needs to be investigated is the public mutilation of Anderson's genitals. 3 years ago, in the Sports Illustrated article where he compared himself to Jackie Robinson, Anderson proudly boasted about calling Royals pitcher Brad Keller a weak-ass effing N-word. He called Keller a weak-ass effing N-word. Anderson received a 1-game suspension for that derogatory attack. Keller is white. I'm sure the light discipline given to Anderson for that bit of racism caught the attention of many white major league players. Anderson's defiance surely registered too. It's also difficult to miss Anderson's delusion and/or racial dysphoria. In the Sports Illustrated piece, Anderson and the writer, a woman named Stephanie Epstein, insinuated that Band-Aid, yes, Band-Aid, the thing you put on when you get a little hurt, a scar, is racist because it doesn't make Band-Aids in Anderson's skin tone. Here's the paragraph. I'm not making this up. This is the paragraph. It includes a quote from Anderson. This is Stephanie Epstein, some Sports Illustrated writer that I'm sure knows everything about baseball culture. And this is how, here's the quote, or here's the paragraph. Sometimes the indignities are smaller. After the Royals series, Anderson tore up his left thumb, sliding into second in Detroit. So he dug around in the team first aid kit until he found a 1-inch dot the color of flesh. Someone else's flesh. Quote from Anderson, "That's small. We got bigger problems." End quote. But it is symbolic of his place in his sport in 2019. Anderson plays a white man's game, and he plays it in a white man's Band-Aid. This man compared himself to Jackie Robinson in an article where he's claiming Band-Aids are racist And but they're just a small problem, but he's playing a white man's game in a white man's Band-Aid. I wouldn't call Anderson Jackie. I'd call him Band-Aid or Karen. He thinks, or they think, maybe he doesn't, maybe he's got pronoun problems too. His purpose in life is to be a racism hunter. Racism and victimhood hunting are the new path to stardom. It's Star Trek. Race, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the racism enterprise. Its Black Lives Matter mission to explore strange, inconsequential interactions, to seek out new racism and victimhood, to boldly go where no real man has gone before. No real man wants to be a victim. But the left has convinced black men there's no higher form of black humanity than being a damsel in distress. Instead of Tony La Russa telling Anderson to calm down, act like a man, there's no crying in baseball, and sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me, La Russa baited Anderson to act like a bitch. That's the prevailing message to all men. But black men are the lab rats of the emasculation movement. We're the first to surrender our stick and balls. We're the bells of this ball. Everyone knows it. We're mocked in popular culture. In Game of Thrones, everybody was fighting for power except a group of ballless black men called the Unsullied. Tim Anderson is Grey Worm. He snapped because his feelings got hurt when little Joshy called him Jackie. La Russa and members of the White Sox consoled little Timmy Anderson, claiming Joshy was racist. Black men are perceived to be that fragile and that unstable. No one can tell us the truth and no one can criticize our behavior. In a story where he defends calling an opposing player a weak-ass effing N-word and insinuates that Band-Aid colors are racist, Tim Anderson compared himself to Jackie Robinson. The jokes write themselves. Anderson is a talented baseball player with the mental capacity of an 8-year-old girl. You know why he's that weak and stupid? Because the world constructed by the left rewards him for being that weak and stupid. It has nothing to do with his skin color. Jackie Robinson had the exact same complexion. Robinson lived during an era when the world rewarded men for their intellect, emotional control, and strength. Men are being transitioned into little girls, and little girls are being transitioned into grown men. Weak, old men like Tony La Russa are too afraid to do anything about it. At age 77, with millions of dollars in the bank, La Russa would rather collect another check grooming men for castration than take the risk of telling Anderson or any black man to man up. That's my fire. Again, it's a constant theme on this show, the emasculation of men, and how black men are at the front of that line of men getting emasculated. And Tim Anderson has no idea that he's been emasculated, and that his teammates that are caping up for him are caping up for him because they think he's weak and stupid. And they think if they don't pander to him, they think if they told him the truth, like, dude, he called you Jackie, shut up and play ball, that they don't think he can handle that. They got to deal with him like a little weak child, like a weak little girl. Let's throw the ball to him underhanded. Let's make sure we don't say anything that hurted his feelings. We don't want to hurt his feelings. Oh my God, if he gets called Jackie, he'll fall apart. There were people talking about how courageous it was for Tim Anderson to play yesterday. And oh my God, under all that stress and pressure, and with the Yankees fans booing him and calling him Jackie, he hit a home run. Oh, this is just unbelievable courage. No, it's not. It's an attention whore getting the attention he desperately wants. That's who Tim Anderson is, an attention whore. Go look at all the controversies he's been involved in. He loves and seeks attention, and he'll get it by any means necessary. He's no different than Jussie Smollett. Royce, let's roll out to Minneapolis, bring Royce in. Hey man, what's going on with sports culture where getting called Jackie on the baseball field is somehow a shot below the belt, and we got to launch an investigation by MLB? And look, I know I'm old. That's why I'm bringing you in. You're not old. You're still playing. You're an athlete. You're just in your early 30s, 30, 31 years old. Is it out of bounds? Do we not trash talk anymore in sports? Are people that weak and fragile?
This entire thing is outrageous. These are champagne problems from people who are completely detached with the real issues of the world. And I thought it was completely ridiculous for Anderson to reference himself as Jackie Robinson in the first place, let alone get mad for Donaldson referring to him as Jackie when it was just a repeating of his own characterization. And I thought it was ridiculous for Donaldson to even qualify it and apologize. And La Russa is way, way out in left field. But as petty as this is, the cultural implications are huge. They're incredibly big. And the cultural implication here is that racism is going to continue to be used as this, way to categorize and clump together anything that's anti-narrative, anything that's anti-establishment, and they'll do it through a string of vastly different instances. You got this will be called racism, I'll be called far right, you'll be called far right, Steve Bannon is a white supremacist, and they'll tie it all to the Buffalo shooter as the outcome of when white supremacy and violence goes too far. And the great scam and lie of it all is that they want black people to become victims of race violence. And the Buffalo shooter situation does seem to be an instance where it was a racially motivated attack on black people. But the establishment loves it when that happens. The establishment foams at the mouth. You can see the sparkle in their eyes when black people are the victims of any type of racial violence. And, you can tell that none of this wokeism is really an effort to empower black people or to protect black people. Because if you're watching this today and you're black and you're really worried about the violence of white supremacy breaking out in your local community, go get a conceal and carry. Start to shoot every day. And I realized that this officer that shot the Buffalo shooter in the chest 6 times but didn't take him down because he was wearing a Kevlar vest, easy correction. If a mass shooter breaks out and you're there and you're armed, shoot for the head. And I think if there were 10 black people in that store that day that were armed and had been trained to shoot, that shooter would have had a much more difficult time killing as many people. And even if he was able to kill as many people, I would rather have a gun and be able to defend myself than be the victim. And the establishment likes us being victims, and they'll use these champagne instances of Anderson being called Jackie to homogenize a boogeyman of white supremacy. It's ridiculous.
And you've said a mouthful, all of it true, but what drives me crazy is this whole victim thing that they've made the gold standard is really about being weak. I did not grow up in any way wanting to be a victim and looking for my victimhood and just oh my God, a white person treated me poorly and didn't give me the ultimate amount of respect. I must share this with the world. Does Tim Anderson have any idea how weak he looks, and will any teammate, or maybe not a teammate, because is there anybody black in baseball or in sports that might tap him on the shoulder and say, hey man, pull your skirt down, man. This is a bad look. We can see that they've castrated you, bro. Will anybody tell him that?
No, they won't. And again, this entire wokeism, cultural undermining of America is by design, and the weakness is by design. You got to realize if you take a step back and look at it from the 30,000-foot view, we have traded our freedom for security and materialism. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. And in trading our freedom for security and materialism, we have created this virtue signaling and faux outrage to deal with the reality that we realize we have no control. We've given up all control and agency and sovereignty in our everyday lives. And so these are the claims of grievance politics and identity politics that are the substitute for us actually not having any real governance, self-governance in our lives. And that, part of it is liberal white women just, running amok, and the beta males sitting in the background, counting their chips, running up a tab, running up their bank accounts off of it, and black people playing right into it because all of our cultural leaders that preached against it, they killed them. See, I wanted to say this, but go ahead.
Well, I wanted to go to your point because you've consistently made the point about the liberal white woman and the harm that she has done to black men and black culture. I think this perfectly fits into the Sports Illustrated story written in 2019, written by a Stephanie Epstein, white woman, I'm sure a liberal, and just like, hey man, you got to be careful with who you give access to frame your image. And again, I know some very talented, accomplished female sports writers, but I also know that many of them tend to write from a point of view and perspective that's not consistent with the male masculinity motif or whatever. And so this guy let some liberal white woman write a piece framing him in 2019. And that's how you get someone writing that Band-Aids are racist. And this is a symptom of just how much oppression he faces and how isolated he is, that even when he gets an owie on his arm, he can't find a black Band-Aid. This is like, she put a clown suit on this guy, and I'm not sure he's remotely aware of it.
Yeah, no, I think he understands it. I think a lot of these woke athletes understand the way they're being used by the establishment and by the narrative. And it's a way for us to try and hide from taking any responsibility, right? And all of this perpetual victimhood and weakness, again, is a predicate for us to give over our authority to government. That's the slow encroachment that's taking place here. You're going to be a victim of racism and white supremacy unless we, the government, protect you from that, unless we come in and save you, unless we are able to indoctrinate people with ideologies that are anti-God and anti-Christian or anti-American to protect you from victimhood. And again, you got to look at a situation like Malcolm X, and I bring him up often, but this is another prime example where Malcolm X, the wiretaps that were initially used to surveil Malcolm X by the FBI were used on the grounds of him advocating to start the Rifle Club. And a lot of people think Malcolm X was killed because he was black and the implications of him being black, but I tend to believe that it was his advocacy of Second Amendment rights and his nationalism, black nationalism, and that black nationalism would eventually merge with white nationalism, and that the Second Amendment and the independent business owner and entrepreneur are the bastion against globalism and economic imperialism. This is a deep 3-layered, 4-layered, 10-layered game that the mainstream media has been commissioned to play with the minds of everyday American citizens. Go get a gun. It was never for the United States government to ensure your security. And as we surrendered our security to the government and to the state during the rise of our industrial stage and now even more into the radical consumer stage, these are all champagne problems. And we're all getting off by virtue signaling and having faux outrage because we know we don't have any real control. We know that we're at the government's whim, we're at the establishment's whim. And that makes us radically anxious and depressed. And the liberal white woman is the prime example.
Royce, I want you to expound. You've said something fascinating here, that you saw or see a path where black nationalism and white nationalism could merge and find some synergy and unity. Could you expound on that, why you believe that?
Well, the early iteration of the Nation of Islam's suggestion around nationalism was that what was a separatist idea, right? That black people should have their own land and their own communities where they govern themselves. I think that was a bit extreme, but again, we were living in a different time racially. But I think today, to say that black people in America should be nationalists in their mindset and should look and aim to see the black community as a fundamental pillar of America, of the fabric of America, and that the rise of black communities, the rise of black families, the rise of black individuals is a net positive for the overall rise of America as a nation, is fundamentally and categorically true. And so Malcolm was railroaded at a time where his message may have been hard to see the trajectory of, but had black nationalism been able to play out, it would have naturally been an ally of what they say is white nationalism. Because truly, the nationalist mindset is just to say that once we create a borderless society, once we create a global governance, we lose what America's founding values are, which we can see because the left constantly tries to attack the Constitution and makes all of America's sins, a justification that or a validation that America is inherently bad or evil. But as we go to globalism, we will lose what it is to be America. And that goes for black people too. And on the way, black people will continue to be victims, right? Convenient victims to point to against the neoliberal left's real enemy, which is the working class, but also white Christian men.
Royce, what I always heard from the Nation of Islam, the autobiography of Malcolm X is my favorite book of all time. Probably read it a half dozen times. When I was in college, I listened to a lot of Farrakhan tapes. I've never hidden that. And the message that always appealed to me was self-responsibility, self-destiny, agency. You're in control. That's what always appealed to me. And that's why what you said rings true to me, is because in my early intellectual development, the black nationalist movement appealed to me because of self-responsibility. And that whole belief in self-responsibility is why I've been able to build relationships and agreement with conservative white people who believe in self-responsibility. I'm just looking for allies and people that believe in self-responsibility. And I'm just not going to be an idiot and act like that this country hasn't been good to me, that the sacrifices generations made before me, my parents' generation and generations before that, hasn't made America the ideal place for a black man to live and to achieve. And I want to partner with and be in league with whoever believes in self-responsibility and whoever believes in God. And I don't care what color they are.
Well, there's two questions to answer at once, and we have to be able to answer them simultaneously. Is the game and the system rigged? Absolutely. Is the rigging of the system all 100% predicated on race? No, it's not. It's more predicated on classism and elitism. And black people as a group, but all working class people and all citizens as a group have to ask ourselves, what is the answer for us as individuals? Is it for us to quit in a rigged game as individuals because it's rigged? No. We have to continue to develop ourselves and continue to work on ourselves and become the best we can be so that we can fight a system that is definitely rigged. But mostly what the liberal establishment has suggested or promoted is renounce America. Renounce your citizenship. Renounce your individuality. Renounce all of your power over and we'll sort out all of the fairness or unfairness for you. And the real truth behind it is they don't plan for the system to be any fair once they take over. They plan for themselves to be in a position so strong that we'll all have to bend the knee or not be able to eat, not be able to access water, not be able to own land, not be able to own a gun, not to have any ownership. That's the communist model, is that the individual has no ownership. And not just your individual, not your individual self, but individual in the terms of business as well. You won't be able to own a company. You only be able to own a company through the state. Or actually the state will only be able to own a company, and you'll be the manager of a company that's state-owned. That's communist China. Okay, so Malcolm was brilliant when he said the price of freedom is death. And I think that's something Black people have to really take to heart. The price of freedom is death. And he doesn't mean that becoming free happens once you die. It means that you have to wrestle with and accept that death is a possibility that comes with freedom. Okay, and what's interesting about that Malcolm X quote, which is infamous, one of his infamous quotes, is that it was originally said by Thomas Jefferson, right? So for all of the criticism around America's founding fathers and the inception and the Constitution and the racism and the slavery, one of Malcolm X's most profound quotes comes from Thomas Jefferson.
Malcolm X, Thomas Jefferson, they don't think much different than me. Royce, thank you so much, appreciate it. People had no idea that the Tim Anderson, Josh Donaldson, or kerfuffle had this many legs to it, and the conversation could be expanded as broadly as we just did there. But it did. This whole emasculation of men in general, Black men in particular, it speaks to a larger issue going on in American society and what the left is doing and how they have convinced us that there's no higher form of humanity than being a victim. And so we look for it everywhere. Tim Anderson's looking for it in Band-Aid packages. My God, if he can find it in Band-Aid, he can find it anywhere. All right, let's take care of some business. Summer's almost here, and do you know what you need? Juicy, charbroiled, over open flame burgers. Now, I don't just mean any burgers. I mean American Wagyu burgers made from some of the best beef you've ever tasted in your life. Our friends over at Good Ranchers are here to help provide the great food that is needed to have a great time. Good Ranchers American Wagyu is raised right here in the United States and produces the rich, buttery texture that people who know their steaks crave. These burgers are individually wrapped so you can easily pull them out and cook them on the grill or in the skillet, and they're good for other meals too. With meat prices soaring, I love that when you subscribe, you lock in your price and get $25 off every box for the life of your subscription. As long as you're subscribed, your price will not change. 2 pounds of free Wagyu burgers and zero inflation? What are you waiting for? Go get both by using my code FEARLESS or by visiting goodranchers.com/fearless. If you don't buy the meat in your house, then tell the person who does to grab your 2 free pounds of American Wagyu burgers today before they're gone. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. I can't wait. It's Memorial Weekend, the Indy 500s this weekend. I'm going home again, and we're going to have some good American Wagyu out on the grill. My brother power washed my mother's back deck, and we're going to do some Good Ranchers eating on Memorial Weekend and see who wins the Indy 500. All right, the Korean Cosell, Steve Kim, next.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So
All right, welcome back. Time to roll out to Los Angeles and bring in our main man, Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell. Steve, welcome back to the show. I had to talk to you about this Tim Anderson, Josh Donaldson, Tony La Russa, White Sox, Yankees. Oh my God, Tim Anderson, he was called Jackie. and that was racist. And I've never seen a more overblown thing than this, but it really doesn't surprise me because Tony La Russa is a 77-year-old geezer stealing $1 million or $1.5 million from the Chicago White Sox, just trying to wrap up his career. And the last thing he wants to be accused of is being racist, so he threw gas on this whole deal with Tim Anderson. But I can't wait to hear the Korean Cosell. Literally, I'm calling you the Korean Cosell. That's probably racist if we ask Tony La Russa and Tim Anderson.
Yeah, the Chicago White Sox. That's what they are nowadays. And I don't know what is more insulting. What Josh Donaldson said in ribbing Anderson, or Anderson actually comparing himself to Jackie Robinson at all. The irony of saying that you're Jackie Robinson, knowing what he went through as he came into the major leagues in 1947 to break the color line, and to paint Josh Donaldson as this modern-day Enos Country Slaughter, who was one of many players who openly rebelled and taunted Robinson, it just goes to show you that there are different sets of rules. The one mistake Donaldson made, I think two of them. Number one is not realizing there's a different set of rules now. You're not allowed to rib Anderson. And then he basically somehow him and Aaron Boone are trying to softly apologize, which they shouldn't at all, but I guess they're forced to. But the bottom line is this. Tim Anderson's a shortstop, and he should be treated with kid gloves. Don't say anything to him. Don't kid around with them. No locker room humor. In fact, don't even look his way. Just ignore him. Save yourself the hassle. Here's the other question that I want to ask you, Jason, as someone that was on the beat. Me and you have had to interview athletes before. We've been on the scene in locker rooms and post-game situations where it gets heated. Today's media at large, the corporate legacy media, is so gutless. I'd be willing to bet that many of these journalists, if you want to call them that, probably don't have any harsh feelings towards Donaldson. They don't think it's offensive. But because everyone now is under pressure, not to just be, not racist, you have to be virulently anti-racist. En masse, they all jumped on Donaldson, and not one of them, basically, except us two, we're fearless, had the guts to say, this is a non-story. Anderson needs to move on and toughen up.
Steve, what's offensive to me is, and again, you're mostly in the boxing environment.
Yeah.
And the things that get said inside of a gym are pretty profane, pretty cruel. No one's feelings are spared. For me, as someone coming from the sports world, being an athlete, being in locker room environments, this is so mundane, so tame. So this is the good-natured ribbing that has always been a part of sports. And again, I have to go back, we're feminizing sports to the level where you can't even joke with people. And again, I don't think he was trying to be Tim Anderson's best friend. He was trying to get inside his head and poke him. And that, when I think about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and that era, Michael Jordan and the trash talking that went on the court and was commonplace and was celebrated in sports, that we've now moved to a place where you can't call a guy who called himself Jackie Robinson, you can't call him Jackie. What are we doing to sports?
You said it yourself. We are softening it, but there are two sets of rules. Speaking of Larry Bird, he one time said, if I ever saw a team put a white guy on me, I'd take it as an insult. I don't even know if he'd be able to say that nowadays. That'd be a big thing. But, here's the thing that gets me about Anderson. Jackie Robinson had to go through so many things, and then Larry Doby after him for the American League. What you go through right now, Tim, is nothing. It's actually an insult. You need to stop using that analogy because if that actually got you upset, then you're soft, and consider yourself very lucky that you play in this era where you are now treated with kid gloves, as I said, and handled like a Fabergé egg. As for Tony La Russa, he's in a very difficult spot, but I don't have a lot of sympathy for him because you think he would be at that age and a status and a place in life where he can at least be honest and say, look, things got out of hand. Nowadays, we're more sensitive. But for him to flat out say that there was a racist comment said And then that's all I'm going to say about it. I wish one of the writers would have said, well, wait a minute. He himself, if they would have known the context, there has to be someone with enough guts to ask La Russa, well, if a guy calls himself Jackie Robinson, do other players not have the right to derisively use that against them in the field of play? But I believe many of these journalists and writers are simply afraid to say it because in that corporate media sphere, they are not even allowed to defend Josh Donaldson, even if they really believe in the deepest recesses of their mind that he did nothing wrong.
I'm trying to figure out, and not figure out, but like, if Tim Anderson and the White Sox, because some of Tim Anderson's teammates rallied around him and said, yeah, Josh Donaldson knew what he was doing, he was wrong. And I'm like, are we that fragile? Are black athletes and this generation of 40 and below black, are we seen as that fragile that we have to be handled with kid gloves to this level? I hope that that's not the case, but that does seem like where we're headed.
Well, look, that's the new standard that's been set by everybody. As relates to his teammates, in situations like this, what I have noticed, Jason, is that this then becomes the oppression Olympics, and you're almost bound to defend the teammate, especially if he's a minority, and because you want to get points. You want to get social justice points. You want to have that equity, and then you want to be invited to the cookout, and then you want to be known as an ally. And it's ridiculous. A lot of this is about show and tell. Like, see, I defended the guy. I got his back, and I'm down with the cause. I just don't think there's a lot of sincerity in this. And I kind of feel bad for Josh Donaldson, but I hope he realizes the minute you capitulate and you give in and you apologize, that is a slippery slope where you start to go down the abyss. I would have, and again, this is not realistic, but if I'm Josh Donaldson, I would have said, I said what I said. You people don't have to like it, but I am not taking it back. I am not sorry. Unfortunately, the issue then becomes the organization themselves. They may have actually forced Josh Donaldson into an apology. That much I do understand.
Well, hats off to New York Yankees fans who booed Tim Anderson and chanted Jackie at him. Hats off to them for not backing down. At least somebody's got a pair still swinging between their legs, and some women with some balls as well. I want to move on to my favorite athlete of all time. What is Tiger like? 25, 30, 40% tie. Does that make him your Asian brother from another mother? I'm sure you're some sort of Tiger Woods fan. He withdrew from the PGA Championship this weekend after a third round 79. I watched every stroke of that. I'm a Tiger Woods nut. I got on my ESPN Plus and watched that disaster. And here was the conclusion I came to, Steve. Either, and you help me decide, either Nike is afraid of Tiger going and playing in the State Farm Buick Open Honda Classic Championship and not making the cut. And so that's why he's only competing in majors at this point, because it's heroic. He made the cut of a major. Or if he misses the cut in a major, it's not as embarrassing as missing the cut at the Buick Open or one of these mundane, regular golf tournaments. But if Tiger ever wants to return to form, any type of championship caliber form, he's going to have to go out and grind it out on the regular tour and get back into playing form. He can't just do it by cherry picking the majors. If he does, he's going to do what we've seen in the last two majors. He'll have a couple of decent Thursdays and Fridays, and then look like, a guy that's just not in shape mentally or physically for the third and fourth round of these major tournaments. He's got to get out here and grind if he wants to get back to any type of championship form?
Well, first of all, I am not a fan of Tiger Woods. I'm that rare Asian. I'm a good driver, bad at math, and I hate golf. Sorry, the Campbell Nation has never done it for me. I've always believed that his impact on the world has been overblown. I've never understood it. I don't even think, look, I'm not saying he's not an athlete, but the average ordinary 4-round prize fighter is a better athlete than any golfer. Okay? Bottom line, and I will die on that hill 50 different times. Now, as it relates to Tiger Woods, what is he right now? I've used this analogy before in boxing. One of my favorite movies, The Blues Brothers. Remember at the end when they had that great concert to save the nun and her church? And they said, okay, we have 100 miles to go. We got a full tank of gas, and we're wearing sunglasses, and it's dark outside. So they have to get to the city assessor's office to drop off the check. And finally, the Blues Brothers, Jake and Elwood, they pull up, and all of a sudden, they get to it, and the car just blows up. Remember that black car? That's Tiger's body. That's Tiger's body. Jay, I completely disagree with you. He's at that point like that classic car. You can only drive him once a week on Sundays, maybe on Whittier Boulevard for the car show. Drive him nice and slow. Don't take him out on that road trip. He's not meant to drive in traffic every single day. He's not. But in my view, now, didn't Tiger win a majors about 4 or 5 years ago? It was a great Cinderella story, 2018 or
It was
so.
just a couple of years ago. He won the Masters.
He won the Masters. Okay. That should have been, if he's Muhammad Ali, which he isn't, but if you're going to make that analogy, that should have been his Muhammad Ali beating Leon Spinks in the rematch moment. In 1978, it was very obvious that after the Rumble in the Jungle, the Thriller in Manila, Muhammad Ali was at the very tail end. He got beat by Leon Spinks in his 7th or 8th pro fight. Then they have the rematch 5-6 months later at the Superdome, and he wins that fight to become the first 3-time heavyweight champion of the world or something. And it was a great momentous occasion. He should have walked away then, because after that, for Muhammad Ali, was an ill-fated fight against Larry Holmes and then Trevor Berbick, which was utterly forgettable. Tiger should have walked away then. Bottom line, look, go to the Seniors Tour. That's what he should be doing. But for Tiger Woods, who at one time was on par, pun fully intended, with Jack Nicklaus, this is now sad. I'm not even a Tiger fan, and I feel bad for him. But I'm just telling you, Jason, he does not have enough in the gas tank to play regularly. He just doesn't. His body is completely broken down.
Okay, I'm not even going to debate you. I disagree with you, but I'm not going to debate you on that because, look, you win the Masters, and the Tiger's just 46. You still go out and compete and play. You just won the Masters. Heck, if he doesn't have that second car accident, maybe he wins this year's Master because Augusta sets up well for him and he knows the course really well. You don't walk away and retire after winning the Masters, particularly before this last accident. But here's the question I want you to ask yourself, because what you're saying may be true, but we'll never know if all he does is go out and cherry pick major tournaments to play in. And so what do you think is driving his decision at the moment to only play in majors? Is it Nike telling him to avoid playing in these regular tournaments and the embarrassment of missing the cut? Or is it Tiger's own ego that couldn't handle not making the cut or finishing? I think he was like, when he withdrew Saturday, I think he was in 76th place. Is it Tiger's ego or is it Nike's advice keeping him out of these regular tournaments?
It could be a bit of both, but I'm going to use another boxing analogy, which absolutely kills me since we're talking about Tiger Woods, a golfer. When most boxers start off as 4- and 6-round fighters, they're very, very active. They fight very often. Then they become 8-round fighters, then 10-round fighters, and they eventually fight for a championship. But they're generally very active within the first, I would say, 7 to 10 years of a career, if it actually lasts that long. Then if you become an icon, like a Manny Pacquiao, a Floyd Mayweather, an Oscar De La Hoya, when you reach that multi-million-dollar level and your pay-per-views are the biggest events in the sports, these guys' activity overall wanes a lot. For instance, Marvin Hagler, had almost 70 fights his last 3 years, 85, 86, 87. He only fought one time each. There comes a point in time where I believe that Tiger, who's given so much to the sport, he's done it his whole life. I think mentally, he might be more fatigued than his body is broken down physically. In other words, a guy like him can get up for the U.S. Open, the British Open, and the Masters, and I guess whatever that other majors is. So if you allow him to prepare 3 to 4 months, like a lot of fighters do with the training camp, to get in there once or twice a year, they're up for it. But if you're going to ask him to play 8 to 10 to 12 tournaments a year, Jason, trust me, there will be a lot of tournaments that right around the 53rd hole, he's just going to wave the white flag and say, nah, I'm good. I'm good. I actually think, and again, I'm going to defend Tiger here. At this stage of his life and his career, because I know what he means to the television ratings of the PGA, they should be thankful that he's even doing this at this moment.
Steve, you're not a golf fan.
I'm not. You're right.
He's tied with Sam Snead at 82 victories on the PGA Tour. Him getting to 83, that's the consolation prize for not getting to 18, Jack's number of total major victories. And so if he can get to 83 and stand alone ahead of Sam Snead, it's an incredible accomplishment that I'm sure he has in the back of his mind. But I think fear right now is motivating him to stay away from that. Again, because I sat and watched all of that, I listened to broadcasters Thursday and Friday talk, oh, this is so heroic. Tiger grinded it out on the back nine and shot a 69 and made the cut, by a stroke and blah, blah. This is so, they could spin it everything he did Thursday and Friday, even though for him it was basically average rounds of golf. They could spin it as heroic in a story. You can't do that at the Buick Open or, the Waffle House Invitational. You can't do it. at
Waffle House, huh?
But
he's got a history there with Waffle House, huh?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But I'm telling you, 83 is important to him. He's got to get the courage to go out there and take the risk and risk missing the cut at some nondescript tournament. This little thing of cherry picking majors blowing up in his face. Hey, I want to switch to one other topic outside of sports. I don't know if you caught this, and I think we have a little clip here. Bill Maher continues to be on a woke-busting rampage on his HBO show. Man, he went off on the transgender movement this Friday. And, we've seen him go against the woke mob on a bunch of different issues, but to basically hop into Dave Chappelle's frying pan and go after that, I don't think people saw that coming from Bill Maher. I think we got a little clip here, a taste of it.
Broken down over time, the LGBT population of America seems to be roughly doubling every generation. According to a recent Gallup poll, less than 1% of Americans born before 1946, that's Joe Biden's generation, identify that way. 2.6% of boomers do, 4.2% of Gen X, 10.5% of millennials, and 20.8% of Gen Z. Which means if we follow this trajectory, we will all be gay in 2054. Gender fluid, kids are fluid about everything. If kids knew what they wanted to be at age 8, the world would be filled with cowboys and princesses. I wanted to be a pirate. Thank God nobody took me seriously and scheduled me for eye removal and...
I've been tracking Bill Maher getting red-pilled for a solid year and a half, maybe 2 years. I've always liked Bill Maher because I thought he was honest, I thought he was smart, and I've been saying ever since Trump got out of office, now that he doesn't have Trump to talk about, he's going to have to deal with the truth. And once he starts dealing with the truth, he's going to figure out how BS the woke is. Your thoughts on the red pilling of Bill Maher?
All I could say is after those clips in this past weekend show, if he does a concert at the Hollywood Bowl, I would get extra security if I'm Bill Maher. But you're right, though. There was a point where I watched that show weekly for years, and there came a point probably halfway through the Trump administration where I said, okay, I can't take it. I thought Bill lost his way. Now it looks like he's getting back onto the plantation. And I think there's another factor here. I believe he lives in California. Anyone that has a shred of honesty and intelligence, or a mixture of both, can't see what is going on in our state. Just driving around the city, looking at the crime reports, watching any type of news that has any integrity, and think what is taking place in our city is acceptable over the long term. But this is where people will rip Bill Maher. They only get honest or get outraged when it affects them directly. And I think that's one of the issues people have with the elite, that when you're on the ivory tower on top looking down at us peasants, you don't care. You want us to eat cake. As soon as it affects you, now all of a sudden you become honest and a speaker of truth. But I will give Bill Maher credit, given the fact that the circles that he runs in, I would bet, because I think I've gone through this, you've probably gone through this, when you make your beliefs on this side of the fence, and I guess you want to call it right, so clear, and with the platform that he has, he's probably lost friends, and for him to do this so consistently the past 12 to 18 months, as you said, I'll give a tip of the cap. He does deserve some credit.
Well, he deserves some credit, but I also think he's a businessman that has his finger in the air, that can see that the independent route is the way to go moving forward. And so he started this podcast network of his own, Club Random, I think he calls it. And I think he sees that as the future. He wants the same independence Joe Rogan has, Adam Carolla. Adam Carolla was on his show this past weekend. And so I think he's building his path towards independence and away from the corporate purse strings of an HBO and any other network. And, I think he signed a 2-year, extension, and I think this is it. He hopes that his podcast takes off. And didn't I just see Conan O'Brien just got a deal for his podcast there for $150 million? Bill Maher wants some of that type money. Let's keep it moving. I think it's time, and let's wrap up the show, because I think it's time for my favorite segment, the approval rating. All right, thank you for joining me for this approval rating, Steve. Let's see how low you can go. Tony La Russa is our topic, as we talked about throughout the show with Royce White and with you as well. Tony La Russa, a guy that I'm calling a baby groomer, is grooming men into being beta males. So job performance, I think the White Sox, they swept that doubleheader, and now they're one game above 500 this year. So, Tony La Russa's had a lot of success over the years, won some World Series, very well respected. I'm going to give him a 15 in job performance as a manager of the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, I looked up their record. They're 21-20 now, and they're not out of anything. This thing is a marathon. I gave them a 10, though. That whole thing just kind of bothers me. Now, if you want to go overall job performance, which we're not doing, you could probably go higher, but right there he gets the Bo Derek.
Character is our next. I'm calling him a groomer, so I don't know how I could be too high in character, and so I'm not. I give him a 10. I'll go Bo Derek in terms of character. I think his behavior this weekend, low character. Tony La Russa, a 10 in character.
Oh, he's a character now. He's a Captain SJW, and I gave him a 5. No respect for that. No respect. He knows what he's doing. He's appeasing the mob. He is playing to the crowd. I think the word is called pandering, and that's what he's doing. A 5.
Authenticity, I think he's completely inauthentic. Guy's best friends with Bill Parcells and Bobby Knight, and now he's a woke social justice warrior. Are you kidding me? Now he's captain of playing the race card. I don't find it authentic at all. This guy's been in baseball since professional baseball, Major League, since 1963. And someone getting called Jackie is racism and this shot below the belt. Give me a break. Guy's completely inauthentic. I give him a 5.
You know, I'd like to see if Bill Parcells or Robert Montgomery are still friends with them. I would bet that those two guys were probably rolling their eyes, shaking their head, and I don't know. If I was those two, I would take him off the text chain. I gave him a 3. I'm sorry. There's nothing authentic about what Tony La Russa did this past weekend.
I would love to see Bobby Knight's text string and who he's in a text string with, and if he knows how to text. It factor. Look, the guy's had a lot of success. He's been involved in baseball 59 years. I give him a 16 in it factor.
You know what? This is where I actually did factor in his whole career. And I still remember as a kid, he was the manager of the Chicago White Sox in the early 80s, actually won the AL West. And then he had, I would think, a dominant run, even though they only won 1 World Series with the Oakland Athletics. He was ahead of his time in terms of the bullpen usage and platooning and all that stuff. And I think he won a title or 2 with St. Louis. Look, when you hire a Tony La Russa, even at this age, that means you have a shot. That's a serious manager with Hall of Fame credentials. So with that, I have to give him credit. I gave him a 20.
All right, you've got him at 38, a dumpster fire. I have him just barely candlelit at a 46. Steve, thank you so much. A great start to our week here on Monday. Cree and Cosell, I'm going to let you go. And I'm going to let you guys go because I hear tomorrow, and that means we'll see you tomorrow.
Nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I wanna be. I just want. I wanna be. I just want. I wanna be. I just want.